The Romantic poet Lord Byron was mad, bad, and dangerous to know. With the ego the size of a god and the emotional stability of a thunderstorm, he wrote poetry that scandalized a nation, slept with half of Europe, and became the prototype for one of classic and contemporary literature's most enduring and irresistible figures, the Byronic hero. And one of the best examples is the character of Heathcliff from Emily Bronte's masterpiece, Wuthering Heights. Now in this video, we're going to head to the wild and rugged Yorkshire Moors and see if we can find out what inspired Emily Brontë to create a character like Heathcliff. And also, what exactly is a Byronic character, and why do nice girls keep falling for these guys? Now, the Byronic character is usually male and most commonly appears in Gothic literature. A Byronic character is a dark, forbidding figure who is basically carrying a lot of baggage. They are a complex mixture of arrogance and anguish. They are defiant and rebellious and on a course of self-destruction. They are alienated figures, oftentimes self-imposed, and they are filled with powerful emotions. They are a mix of intense passion and equally intense hate. But at the same time, they possess a sexual charisma that makes them very attractive to the other characters, as well as to the readers. Now, Byron became a celebrity not only because of his poetry, but also because of his scandalous lifestyle. Byron would run up huge debts that he either couldn't or wouldn't pay, and he had numerous love affairs, and one of them got his ass booted out of England. Now, Byron's persona blended with his characters, and readers believed that they were one and the same, and well, Byron did little to dissuade them from that. And Byron's notoriety would go on to inspire future writers to use his character as a template for their own. Now, Emily never met Byron as he shuffled off the mortal coil 23 years before Wuthering Heights was published in 1847. But she did have access to him through books. Her father, Patrick Brontë, was very liberal for the time in what he allowed his children to read, especially his daughters, because nice girls didn't read Byron. Now, Emily would have read about characters like Childe Harold, who was clever and passionate and rebellious. And he was also brooding and melancholy and, well, not much fun at parties. But he also has that element of that dark sensuality that makes him very attractive. The character that Heathcliff is closest related to would be Manfred. Manfred was a dramatic poem that Byron wrote in 1816. And Manfred is the literary poster boy when it comes to the Byronic hero. He's a psychologically complex and defiant figure, harboring a secret guilt that he can't or refuses to release himself from. Byron never explicitly states what that secret is, but if you've read it, it's pretty obvious that there's a incestuous affair going on between Manfred and his sister Astarte. And when Astarte suddenly dies, Manfred is emotionally wrecked, and he shuns all human contact, refusing to seek forgiveness or redemption. So you can imagine the influence that these characters would have had on Emily Brontë when she was creating her own. Wuthering Heights, published in 1847, is kind of a study in the ignoble. Even Emily's own sister, Charlotte Brontë, stated that the book had vivid and fearful scenes. And she's not wrong. The characters are very unpleasant. They're arrogant and obnoxious and self-absorbed and revengeful. And none more so than Heathcliff. And while Byronic characters are usually thought of as being morally gray, Heathcliff, well, he goes a lot darker. Now, when Mr. Earnshaw brings the yet unnamed orphan home, he refers to him as being dark, almost as if it came from the devil. Now, notice he refers to Heathcliff as it and not he. And he already kind of sets him apart as this sort of demonic creature that the rest of the family want to chuck out onto the moors, even though he's a small child. Now, with Heathcliff's dark hair, his dark eyes, and his dark skin, well, he's already an outcast because he doesn't look like the rest of the Earnshaws. And this already sets up a feeling of isolation and alienation early on. Now, Emily would have most certainly been aware of the scandals surrounding Byron's supposed affair with his half-sister, Augusta Lee. And she got around that whole incest thing by making Catherine and Heathcliff unrelated siblings, and they never actually consummate the relationship in the story either. Now, Heathcliff and Manfred are both obsessed by this all-consuming love that drives them to the point of insanity. Spanish philosopher Jose Ortega Gasset stated that falling in love automatically tends towards madness. And while not defined as a mental illness, obsessive love, or love sickness as it's known, do share some of the same symptoms. You have the manic euphoria and the deep depression when you're away from the loved one. There's the loss of appetite and the inability to be able to fall asleep. And there's also this anxious feeling that kind of keeps you on this level of tension. There's this deep connection between lovers that makes them feel like they are two sides of the same person. And this is something that both Manfred and Heathcliff declare. Manfred says that, "I say it's blood, my blood, the pure warm stream, which ran in the veins of my father and in ours when we were in our youth and had one heart and loved each other as we should not love." Similarly, in Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff tells Catherine that, "I have not broken your heart. You have broken it, and in breaking it, you have broken mine." And of course, there's the famous line from Catherine where she declares that, "I am Heathcliff." Whereas Manfred is consumed by guilt, Heathcliff is consumed by revenge. And if you think about it, ultimately, Wuthering Heights isn't so much a love story as it is a story about revenge. And in both stories, the characters are tormented by the loss. Manfred's loss of Astarte by some unknown sudden death, and Heathcliff's loss of Catherine twice. Once when she marries Edgar Linton, and the other, well, to the grave. And while Manfred goes around trying to find somebody to help him end his misery, Heathcliff goes on to share his misery by making all the other characters as miserable as he is. In both stories, the characters have lost the person who had absorbed their intense passions and reflected it back to them. So they wind up turning that intense love that they have into a destructive force that ultimately destroys them. How romantic. In Wuthering Heights, Brontë uses imagery like the wild windswept moors, the howling winds, and the ghostly apparitions. And these are reminiscent of the Gothic sublime that Byron uses in Manfred. Byron places Manfred at the beginning of the story in a Gothic gallery and then later moves the setting to the Alps. And Emily, of course, her story plays out on the moors. And while these are both vastly different places, can you imagine what these stories would have been like if they had been set in London? So these landscapes are kind of elemental characters, if you will. There are places where Heathcliff and Emily and Manfred can go where there is no judgment. There are no boundaries in nature, and the characters are free to go out and express their passions and their rages. And the characters eventually feed off the energy of nature because they become awed and realize that there are things that are bigger than they are. Now, while Byronic characters are usually male, we can't ignore the fact that Catherine has her own Byronic traits. She's rebellious and defiant, and she refuses to conform to the social expectations of her rank and her gender. And this does make her Byronic. Now, while Heathcliff is Byronic, he isn't exactly heroic. There's really nothing redeemable about him. Even his intense love for Catherine isn't really, well, all that admirable. Now, Heathcliff is a deeply flawed and wounded character, and there's this romantic fantasy that some readers might have about being able to heal him, to redeem him, maybe even tame him. But I don't think that's likely. And there's his all consuming love for Catherine, which is misread as being romantic. And then there's the seeing Heathcliff not as a villain, but as a victim. He's alienated from everybody else, and eventually Catherine leaves him as well. And there's also the physical and psychological abuse that he had at the hands of Hindley. So you almost do feel sorry for him. Almost. But ultimately, Heathcliff is the embodiment of forbidden love, intense passion and emotion, and his dark Gothic nature. And while we wouldn't want to meet him in person, he does offer a seductive escape from reality. Now, Emily Brontë wasn't the only sister who was inspired by Byron. Charlotte Brontë, as you know, wrote Jane Eyre, and she has her own Byronic character in Mr. Rochester. But that's another video. Now, Emily Brontë didn't shy away from scandalous, disturbing subjects. And while she did find inspiration from Byron, Wuthering Heights is uniquely her own. It is as unsettling as it is beautiful, and helped push the boundaries of what a novel could achieve, while inspiring generations of writers who would follow her. So how do you think Emily Brontë would feel about her novel today? Do you think as modern readers that there may be some things that we've missed out on? But I think the most important question is, why do we find morally gray characters so damn attractive? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So thank you for spending some time with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you next time on Absinthe and Ink. Bye-bye.